All right, this article was written in 2021, early 2021, immediately following the split or purge within the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party, of which I was a founding member, that took place on December 29th of 2020. We separated from two members who were founding members, also co-founding members, and what was considered or what was characterized as an elder advisor to the New African Black Panther Party when it was first founded in 2005, excuse me. We ended up separating behind contradictions that arose within the group that we had with the behaviors of the individuals we separated from, as well as the control of the organization by a person who was not of the nationality that was portrayed the party represented essentially, and that was controlled behind the scenes with what we felt was a member who was used as a front man, and some behaviors that were being engaged in that we found problematic and that the individuals refused to be held accountable for. We were struggling to create a new leadership, a democratically elected leadership, with the development of the party on the outside. It was originally co-founded amongst prisoners to remove what had become sort of a calcified leadership, self-appointed leadership that wasn't responsive to the base of the party or the party's mass organization, which at that time was the United Panther movement. And a lot of contradictions had arisen within both groups that had not been resolved, including the organizational structure of the United Panther movement, what its actual function was, how it was to operate as a mass organization, and how it was to be distinguished from the vanguard party, which was the New African Black Panther Party. In separating from the New African Black Panther Party, we reconstituted. There was numerous members who separated from the two members of the New African Black Panther Party. We reconstituted as a Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party. And in doing so, I wrote this and several other articles to resolve some of the unaddressed and unresolved contradictions that had existed under the old organization, including the function, the format, and the basis of organizing amongst the masses or within the communities of the United Panther movement or the mass organization. So we also reconstituted the United Panther movement as the Panther Solidarity Organization, or the PSO. So this article basically was responding to the need to explain the functions of the mass organization in relation to the party, understanding the fundamental contradictions that we were organizing against, both who we were as an organization, what class of people we represented as the oppressed in society, and what class of people we were organizing against as the oppressor and exploiter class in society. It was to elaborate also what exactly was the function, the need, the role of the the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party as a mass-based vanguard party. The levels of consciousness that exist amongst the masses that have to be tapped into in order to understand how to correctly and effectively organize and lead the masses in a genuine struggle to change the oppressed conditions that they live under, and explaining what is the mass line method of leadership that we embrace in organizing and revolutionizing and politicizing the huge sectors of society who are exploited and oppressed by the existing system of capitalist imperialism that is primarily based in America. So those were the issues that brought about the writing of this article and what the article was addressed to try to resolve and explain, and to serve as sort of a blueprint and a guide to how we were going to structure and organize and lead our party's work going forward after the split and the reconstitution as the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party.
Cool.
Well said.
Thank you for that intro. Revolutionizing the Masses in 3 stages: the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party and its intermediate and mass organization. What are we doing? We face the most daunting of tasks, that of building a viable, effective, and ultimately successful revolutionary movement. Actually, I'm going to hang for a sec. Okay.
I think your noise cancellation is taking it.
Yeah, it's a toilet flushing. It's one of them stainless steel thrones.
Yeah, you can delete it now. That's Southern's using the commode. Can you delete that for the recording though?
Yep. Yep. So, what are we doing? We face the most daunting of tasks, that of building a viable, effective, and ultimately successful revolutionary movement within and aimed at piercing the heart of the most powerful and murderous empire the world has yet known, America. Many attempts have been made, and just as many have failed or suffered repeated setbacks, often for lack of learning from past mistakes or becoming disheartened or distracted by secondary contradictions.
We must double down on our efforts, but commit ourselves to applying the dialectical materialist method of analysis and practice every step of the way, so that we are scientific in our mode of work. This begins with understanding who and what we are struggling against and why, who we aim to organize and how, and what forms of organization are required to meet the needs of our work. PSO and unresolved contradictions. This work is not new to the founding members of the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party, who split from the New African Black Panther Party on December 29, 2020. Until that time, the United Panther Movement was the principal mass organization of the NABPP. However, most of the UPM united with the RIBPP in the split and later reconstituted itself as the Panther Solidarity Organization. The PSO is now the RIBPP's principal mass organization.
At the time of the split, the UPM was struggling to grasp what a mass organization operating under the NABPP's leadership should look like, and how that leadership should operate. A major cause of this struggle, which was never resolved, was the NABPP's failure to explain its relationship to the UPM and give them any informed guidance in developing its organizational structure and processes of accountability between the organizations. Yet the NABPP's Central Committee was critical of the structure of the UPM comrades were forced to develop on their own and ultimately denounced them as the NABPP's mass organization. Do you want me to get the next one? The RIBPP has inherited these unresolved contradictions, which were created by the NABPP's lack of leadership failures that the RIBPP comrades were struggling against, leading to their split, and which we aim to rectify here and in the accompanying position paper, Organizing the People on the PSO and Intermediate Organizations.
It's a class struggle. Social wealth is produced by workers who, through their collective labor, extract and work up natural resources into consumable products and provide the services that make the organization of societies possible. The existing system of capitalist imperialism is rigged up to allow a tiny group of people who don't perform any meaningful labor to control the institutions and political power and the global system of production and distribution, so that they are able to hoard a vast amount of social wealth for themselves and prevent any meaningful challenge to their power from everyone else. Consequently, access to needed resources falls unevenly on everyone else, causing immense poverty and suffering to over half the world's people, and insecurity and uncertainty for everyone, especially workers.
The masses, therefore, live every moment in conflict and contradiction within the system, or with the system, and those who benefit from it and control it. The beneficiaries and their armed protectors and enforcers must, for this reason, constantly maneuver to keep the masses misinformed, distracted and divided, and contained in order to maintain their power and control, which produces all manner of chaos, social conflict, and instability. Most people, by design of the ruling class, don't understand they live under the system that is deliberately set up to operate in this way, or that they have the ability, once awakened, united, and organized, to fundamentally change it. This is where the Revolutionary Party comes in.
Just as the ruling class organizes and enforces its people, or its power and interests through the medium of political parties, the working class and masses of oppressed people, who are far longer in number and divided as a class, require their own party, a revolutionary party, to raise their consciousness and unite and organize them to seize, exercise, and defend their own political power and interests as a class, and replace capitalist imperialism with a socialist economy that uses social wealth to benefit and meet the needs of all the people on a global scale, a system we call revolutionary intercommunalism. In the post-1960s era of neoliberalism, which we call reactionary intercommunalism, enhanced automation has replaced and pushed vast numbers of workers into perpetual unemployment and peasants off their land. These chronically unemployed and displaced masses have experienced an ongoing great migration and concentration into marginalized urban settings, ghettos, favelas, shanty towns, refugee camps, prisons, and so on, where they are forced to eke out a living by desperate, often criminal and predatory means. These people desperately need cultural, social, and political education and power and access to and control of basic survival resources. With few exceptions, traditional revolutionary parties have looked have looked askance at these desperate layers of these people are as destructive, politically unstable, and unreliable, and because they do not exist at the point of production, they have been dismissed as little revolutionary purpose. These parties have therefore forced their work almost exclusively on active workers and peasants as the main social forces of revolutionary struggle. The original BPP changed their thread. Huey P. Newton, the BPP's co-founder and leading theoretician, recognized that changing global conditions under the U.S.-dominated imperialist system was fueling the unprecedented rise of permanently unemployed people. He predicted that they would soon outnumber the regularly unemployed people. He also recognized that if these marginalized masses were not reached and organized by revolutionaries, they would be used as forces of violent reaction against the traditional revolutionary movement by the establishment. What Huey also was the masses of predominantly urban Black people in America also largely fell into this growing category of desperate, chronically unemployed Lumpen people. He in turn met the challenge of creating a party and strategy that could serve the needs of give leadership to unite, educate, and organize these marginalized people into a mass force. This was the BPP. Huey's prediction about the unprecedented growth of permanently unemployed people in the Lumpen and the need to create revolutionary leadership to serve them has come to pass on a global scale. An intercommunal Panther vanguard is needed today more than ever. This is the need, purpose, and role of the RIBPP.
The three levels of mass consciousness. In revolutionary work, the masses generally exist at three stages of consciousness: the advanced, the intermediate, and the undeveloped. These stages of development generally determine the levels at which we meet and organize the people. The advanced are those who grasp and wholly unite with the ideological and political line of the Revolutionary Party, and have demonstrated their total commitment to its work and willingness to make the necessary sacrifices of placing the people and revolutionary struggle foremost. These people qualify for membership in the advanced organization, which is the party.
The intermediate are those who have leftist political leanings, experience, and/or education, but have not fully learned or embraced the ideological and political line of the party. These people are organized into intermediate organizations, which are led by leading party cadre who work to develop them into advanced forces that may be recruited into the party. The intermediate organizations are also the structures that cadre of other revolutionary parties, namely traditional revolutionary communist parties, may join and formally collaborate with the RIBPP cadre in performing mass work consistent with our dual party strategy. The intermediate organizations also engage in mass work of serving the people and work alongside them to help them meet their needs and solve their problems. The undeveloped are the everyday people from the oppressed communities who have a wide range of political, spiritual, and cultural views and leanings. They lack revolutionary experience and education and have different levels of political commitment and discipline, but generally recognize that change needs to be made in the interest of the oppressed communities and masses. The undeveloped are essentially the general masses of people who form the social base of the struggle and of the mass organizations, which they may freely join. The basis of unity of the mass organizations sponsored by the RIBPP as its own mass organizations is the party's 10-point program. Otherwise, members of the mass organizations are free to embrace a wide range of beliefs and ideas. Members of the party and intermediate organizations must work alongside the masses within the mass organizations to help develop them and win them over politically, but on a wholly voluntary basis. We cannot compel the mass organizations or their members to embrace our views nor to commit to any practice, but we may struggle to win them over through principled debate, discussion, and political education.
We may not use our stature as party or intermediate organization members to pressure the mass organizations or their members to engage in any practices or work that they are as yet unwilling or unprepared to engage in. In the developmental stages of all revolutionary movements, the advanced or vanguard are always in the minority. The intermediary are larger in number, but certainly not the majority. While the undeveloped form the vast majority of the people, in the dialectical process of development of revolutionary forces, the advancement work to development the intermediate into advanced forces, while the intermediate work to develop the undeveloped into intermediate forces. This is why we have the vanguard party, the intermediate organizations and the mass organizations, so that in a dialectical process, the vanguard develop advanced cadre out of the intermediate organizations, and the intermediate comrades develop the undeveloped masses into the intermediate forces, like moving the masses up floor by floor so that they ultimately become the advanced themselves.
In this way, we systematically develop and grow the revolutionary movement out of the masses, transforming the minority into the majority, quantitative change, until we created the conditions for the masses to seize power, qualitative lead, and transform reactionary intercommunalism into revolutionary intercommunalism. In this work, we must always remember the decisive role of the masses as the makers of history. It is the collective people, not individuals, that are the force of society-wide and world change. So we must win them over to the struggle to make those changes themselves. This can only be done through applying the Maoist mass line. So let's give special attention to what it is and how we must apply it.
The mass line and the method of leadership. The RIBPP adheres to the Marxist-Leninist Maoist mass style of leadership, which recognizes that everything relies on and is determined by the consciousness and voluntary action of the people. Without this, our efforts are in vain and will accomplish nothing. Our work, therefore, entails as a first step raising the people's consciousness. We do not compel the people to accept our ideas. Instead, we begin with and move from their own existing levels of understanding and mind states. A dialectical process from the Mao summed it up as, or a dialectical process that Mao summed up as from the masses to the masses, a back and forth process between the revolutionary vanguard and the people, which he described as summing up, i.e. coordinating and systematizing after careful study the views of the masses, i.e. the views of scattered and unsystematic, and then taking the resulting ideas back to the masses, explaining and popularizing them until the masses embrace them as their own and start to stand up for them and translate them into action by way of testing their correctness. Then it is necessary once more to sum up the views of the masses once again, take the resulting ideas back to the masses so that the masses give them their wholehearted support, and so on over and over again. so that each time these ideas emerge with greater correctness and become more vital and more meaningful. So we learn from the masses what their needs are, elevate and concentrate their understanding of their needs, the cause of those unmet needs, and how to go about solving them, and then work alongside them in implementing the solutions. We do not command or dictate to the people. Instead, as Mal explained, every comrade should help the masses organize themselves step by step and on a voluntary basis to unfold gradually struggles that are necessary and permissible under the external and internal conditions obtained in a particular time and place. Whatever we do, authoritarianism is always erroneous because as a result of our impetuosity, it makes us go beyond the degree of the masses awakening and violates the principle of voluntary action on the part of the masses. It's really deep.
What qualifies a revolutionary party and its members to lead the masses is our mastery and application of the revolutionary proletariat line, or to give what may be called revolutionary proletarian leadership, RPO. The key to RPO is our use of dialectical and historical materialism, which compels us to engage in continuous study of all pertinent social phenomena, constant analysis and review of our work and its results, and grasping history as a process and our role in it. We must be aware of and able to adjust quickly to major changes in the conditions of the masses and events we are involved in, and adjust our plans and policies whenever conditions develop differently than we anticipate. But these factors alone do not enable us to give correct leadership to the people. What's decisive is that we win the masses over to seeing and carrying forward the struggle as their own, which it must be. This calls for our own perseverance and patience, because we cannot engage in advanced actions, no matter how needful they are at a given point in time, until the people become willing and able through our education and persuasion to make those changes themselves. Applying the mass line in the respect determines victory or defeat because of the historical stage of my fault. Because of the historical stage, the movement of the masses is irrepressible whereas moves by small groups of radicals are doomed to isolation and being rendered helpless. In the work of winning the masses and the millions, leading by example is decisive. The masses must trust us, give us their unconditional support, take up our ideas as their own, and support our party throughout the long process of struggling to overturn these oppressive systems.
The people must see our credibility in our superior moral characters, our dedication to their interests, our integrity, receptivity to criticism, honesty in facing and correcting errors, and willingness to engage in self-criticism. These are the qualities that move and win the masses. In this cynical society where social views and values have been molded by the ruling class, the people will only vest their trust and confidence in us if we are genuine communists in our public and personal lives. And as such, we place the interests of the masses above private interests, the general good before any partial good, long-range concerns before the short-range concerns. The people in the oppressed communities, the Lumpen especially, cannot be dictated to. They can't be compelled into any actions. They must see with their own eyes the benefits of any course of action, shown the likelihood of success of any plan, learn from observation and experience that their predicament can be changed for the better, before they will consciously and willingly take it up. And these plans and ideas must correspond to their actual needs, which they recognize themselves, not needs we tell them they have.
This is why we are structuring our organizations to meet the masses in 3 stages: advanced, intermediate, and undeveloped. And why the mass line must be our approach to organizing and leading the people in struggling to end this oppressive system of capitalist imperialism, racism, and police state repression. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
All right, and with that reading, we come to the discussion. Just in the reading, I'd be interested before I would guide or direct anybody in particular directions. Whether any of you have any questions, suggestions, ideas, thoughts, on this article, how it may relate to some of the work you're doing, how it may address some of the questions, or how it may open your own thinking to questions about your work, the work that we're all engaged in against the oppressive nature and features of the system. So if anybody, has any questions, comments, thoughts, I'm interested in hearing.
Yeah, I have a comment because
Actually,
I had
James, if I may, James, I just wanted to. I saw in the chat that Hashan has to leave in just a few minutes. So I wanted to make sure that any questions or comments that he had, he could get a lead on.
Oh, I appreciate that. I only have one. To the point of the advance moving up the intermediary and the intermediary moving up the people on the lower level. What do you think about the advance also participating in moving up the people on the lower level to the intermediary?
It's kind of hard to hear some of what you said. I did hear you say you had a question about the intermediary. I couldn't really understand what you were saying in relation to that.
Yeah, my bad. I was asking, what do you think about the advance also participating in moving those who are underdeveloped up to the intermediary?
What do I think about us participating in work up to the intermediary?
The advanced also moving the underdeveloped up to the intermediary, because it said the intermediary moved the underdeveloped up to the intermediary, and the advanced moved the intermediary up to the advanced. But what about the advanced also like helping with moving the underdeveloped up to the intermediary?
Yeah, the advanced definitely, in general, we can engage, or they can engage in the work with the undeveloped, in raising them up to the level of the intermediary. The only reason I gave as a formal separation or compartmentalization of these different degrees of development is because one can more comfortably and easily give guidance to the one that precedes it, because one is a step up from the other, which is, the intermediate is a step up from the undeveloped, and the advanced is a step up from the intermediate. But the advanced can always give help and support to developing the undeveloped. And they would, of course, be in giving guidance to the intermediate, also would help the intermediate to give a clear and correct guidance and leadership to the undeveloped. So the advance is always going to contribute to the development of the the undeveloped. Just the intermediate is being one step above the undeveloped. They can give the most direct and continuous leadership and guidance by example, and being one step up from the undeveloped can easily see themselves in the development of the intermediate.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
I also had a question about that paragraph specifically. I was trying to look at the text here. It was like you use the term pulling them up step by step, or like moving the masses up floor by floor so they ultimately become the advance themselves. That's I feel like I've seen that before. Can you give like real life examples of that, and maybe like metaphors that we could use that could be useful maybe?
Definitely. In our organizations, what we have, you can look at, even in bourgeois society, it's like when you have someone who comes into a workplace, you have different stages of development or different stages of expertise in the workplace, which you would begin with people who are trainees, people who first come in. And then you would have people who are at the level of a higher level of expertise. Then you would have people who exist between these two stages, who are just the general everyday workers that apply a general level of technical skill, but they haven't reached a level where they are at the higher level of advanced practice, where they can pretty much carry out the entire structure of the organization and guide it in performing the function that the organization exists to perform. So it's kind of like people first come into a job at the intermediate, the introductory level or novice, and then working them up to becoming basic training level, functional, performing the overall operations of the institution. And then as they work and become more effective at doing the job, they can become more capable of operating the entire institution, but also continuing to carry out the functions of the institution on a hands-on level.
Right.
To give you a concrete example, I don't know. Hold on, my line is about to cut off. I'm gonna have to call right back in. Hold on one moment.
You're good.
Let me call you right back, Evan.
While he's calling back, I can give a little bit of my experience. So the first time, in fact, I almost made it part of the study group, but I decided it was like I didn't really want to make people watch a video beforehand, but I did a labor organizer training under a group called EWOC, Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, and for their metaphor for stages of development, instead of using an elevator or an escalator, they use a bullseye. And so that for them, the center of the bullseye is the organizing committee that is trying to organize a union in its workplace, right? And so they say that there are 5. These are not stages, I guess, but there are 5 like positions relative to organizing your workplace that you could have. So the inside of the bullseye is the core organizing team. The outside, the ring directly outside of that are activists rather than organizers. So they'll show up for events, they'll help distribute flyers, they will make phone calls, but they're not really, interested in the organizing aspect of it yet. And then the ring outside of activists is supporter. And that would be people who might send an email or donate or something like that. I'll just finish my thought and then kick it back to Rashid. Regarding real life examples, I was sharing one of workplace organizing and explaining the developmental model a little bit more. And actually, I'll go ahead and put a thing up so people can see it. This PDF, it comes from labornotes.org. It's in a book called Secrets of a Successful Organizer, and it's liberal in the sense that it's like, it's not a revolutionary text. It's like about reformist organizing, if you will. So you could think of their stages of development as never reaching that top floor of revolutionary organizer, right? But nevertheless, we can use their bullseye model. So the center of the bullseye is the core organizers or the advanced, the cadre. The ring outside of that is activists or people who are not necessarily concerned with organizing, but who will do tasks, who enthusiastically and energetically, people will show up for the protests, people will make the phone calls needed to do it, as long as you give them a call list, that kind of thing, right? The next ring around that is supporters, and that's people who will share an email or donate, but not necessarily be active. And then the next ring around that is disengaged. So these are people who either don't know about the unionizing effort or, for one reason or another, are not interested in it. Maybe they don't think it's for them. Maybe they don't think they can do it. Maybe they don't think it has a high chance of success. For whatever reason, they're disengaged. And then the outer ring outside of the bullseye is hostile. And so the way that we teach this in labor organizing is that we always want to be moving someone one ring closer into the center. So if someone is hostile to the idea of labor organizing, like organizing the workplace, we want them to at least be disengaged. We don't want them to be hostile, right? So how can we diffuse that hostility or neutralize it at least so that it doesn't affect the organizing campaign? You know, if they're disengaged, how do we bring them just one ring closer in, just so they're a supporter, right? And so this kind of helps us think through the process of development, and when done well, it can help us think through what actions we need to take as core organizers to facilitate that development. And admittedly, this is something that UPROAR has not given as much conscious attention to as we should have so far at this stage. You know, and there are, I'm on the support secretariat, like organizing the UPROAR, right? So that's on myself and the one other person who's on the general support team. You know, but one thing that I'm hoping, as I mentioned earlier, that can come out of this is shared understanding around what that means for us in the core organizer position or the advanced position, relative, at least anyway, to the mass work that we're doing, which is separate, again, from like what Rashid is really writing about here, which is revolutionary cadre development in a party setting. You know, but just trying to adapt it to the context of UPROAR as a mass organization, which actually, in fact, does use the RIBPP's 10-point program as our unifying platform. So anybody who joins reads through that and says, yeah, I'm about that. You know, and that's, even if they're undeveloped, they agree at least that far, and that helps us to pull them forward. And I'll hush in just a second, but what I'm going to propose for UPROAR coming out of this is that a couple of us keep a spreadsheet on which we track our own development and the development of our membership, so that we can hold ourselves and each other accountable to that necessary development. And so that will look like, you know, a couple of the core organizers getting together maybe once a month and just saying, like, you know, what's on the docket for this person, where are they at, how can we move them forward, how can we move them up, how can we move them closer to the center. And so with that, I'll close. Check.
All right, that's a good outline, and I think I could give further elaboration pivoting off that.
I'm sorry, you're a little quiet, Rashid.
All right, can you hear me? It's better?
Yeah, that's much
better. Okay. Yeah, I was saying that's a good explanation, and particularly using the structure of workers organizing. And it actually I can pivot off that in what I was going to go into, which is the structure of the workplace in general. Our whole struggle is based on advancing those who are the source, the core of social organization and society itself, which are the workers, the producers. And you have three stages of workers in revolutionary struggle. One is undeveloped, the second is the intermediary, and the third is the advanced. And it basically structures exactly along the lines of this article itself. The undeveloped worker is typically the worker who just comes into the workplace with the objective of generating what they need to meet the needs of their family and, to a certain extent, their community. Now, the worker, they being the foundation of society, they being the foundation of the organization of society around working together to produce the needs of the family and the communities at large, they form the foundation of organizing against the system. But they're not conscious of their role as the producers of society, as the people who generate the wealth that sustains society, that is also extracted from them, that enables the class that dominates society to hoard, to extract their wealth, hoard the surplus of it, and through that to become extremely wealthy, and through that dominate and exploit everyone else. Now, the workers, again, they come into the workplace with a basic sense of responsibility to the family. You have another, the intermediate level worker is the class conscious worker, who becomes more conscious within the workplace of organizing to meet the needs of workers. So they develop a higher level of awareness within the workplace, where they may have to struggle for better wages, they may have to struggle for benefits, a safer workplace, etc. And through organizing and unifying together, which is through forming workers' unions, they're able to consolidate their power, their numbers, by working together to change the conditions in the workplace. This is a more class-conscious worker than just the basic worker who comes into the workplace only to meet the needs of their family and the community. This would be the intermediate worker. The advanced worker, or the revolutionary worker, is the worker who has come to understand through political education and organizing the role of the worker as the foundation of society at large, and the contradiction between the workers and the bourgeoisie, or the ruling class, who dominates and exploits the workers and society at large. And in becoming aware and understanding their role as the producers of society and the ones who have nothing to lose but their chains, and they have a fundamental right to overthrow the exploitation of the ruling class or the capitalist class, and to seize control of the sources of, or the means of production, which they form the foundation of, they become a revolutionary force capable of overthrowing the rulership of the capitalist class and seizing power themselves to rule society. So these would be the three stages of developing a consciousness within the workers that explains the three separate gradations of organizing or political organizing amongst the workers. You would have the basic undeveloped workers who don't understand or don't have a sense of awareness of their role in the workplace and their potential power to change the conditions in the workplace. And then you would have the advanced workers who are aware of their roles, or become aware of their roles as the foundation of society and the force through which revolutionary or fundamental change can be made in society. And by educating and organizing the undeveloped workers, they can become gradually aware of their power and their role as a force to change the workplace conditions collectively. And by further advancing and educating them, they can become aware of their role as a revolutionary force able to overthrow an oppressive social system and to take power and organize society to benefit the workers and other oppressed groups. So with that, I hope that answers your question, comrade. Is there does that answer your question, or does that give you a better concept of how we would develop these stages of development that we were talking about?
Yeah, that definitely, I think, clears things up for me. I did want to kind of like add a little to that, not to get too philosophical on this, but there's just a trend that I've noticed with a lot of people that I've worked with and the philosophers that are observing them, where we're in these we don't have the class consciousness at all, for one thing. We're not teaching people this at all, and people are just kind of entering the workplace and feeling complete disconnection to it, where they are just kind of trying to make ends meet for their families, and there's no sense of participation. And they'll have like pizza parties and things like that, where they'll try to imitate the models of participation and the models of good relationships like you'd see at family gatherings and like real parties, but it's like the best they can do is a simple pizza party, even at places like Home Depot and Lowe's, which I've worked at before. Like that's the best that it gets. So I don't know to what degree that's being deliberately not taught. It does seem that there's somewhat deliberate efforts to suppress critical thinking in the schools in the United States. It has been for maybe a century or so, but I don't know how to think about that. I mean, maybe how can we bring what we're talking about here into the education system without terrifying people by using the words communism and Marxism and all that? You know what I mean? Anyways.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the fundamental characteristics of class war, with the ruling class ensuring that political consciousness is not taught to or is not given to the masses. They are endowed with the ideas of the ruling class, which is to accept the society that they exist under as the best of all possible worlds, They are taught the values of the oppressor class, which is the values of competition, of individualist oriented self-gratification, and just individual self-sustaining and self-survival, and not a sense of collective organization or collective struggle. And this is and if we go back to some of the foundational teachings of B.I. Lenin, when he evolved the understanding and the need of the vanguard party, the Revolutionary Party, to give revolutionary consciousness to the masses. That's why the advanced revolutionary leadership is necessary. That's why you would have to have, and this is why revolutionary leaders, political parties, and their cadre are necessary to join these unions, to be part of these mass organizations, which is what a union is, to struggle within those structures to give the masses revolutionary political education, leadership, guidance, and to do the stages of development, the 3 stages that I've offered in this article, to raise them up to the level of a vanguard or, revolutionary education and awareness. This is why you don't have any political consciousness. You don't have any even collective bargaining consciousness within the unions now. It's because it's been purged by destroying and preventing or consciously struggling to stop the development of the revolutionary parties, revolutionary leadership, and then revolutionary parties potentially develop, or the nucleus of revolutionary parties potentially develop. They're co-opted, they're infiltrated, they're given revisionist political history and lines and analyses taken to these groups and organizations to just basically derail them. So it's a class war. It's a conscious struggle by the ruling class to keep revolutionary education and awareness from developing amongst the masses, which is why a revolutionary party is essential, a party of people who have developed a clear revolutionary line of theory and who have a shared ideological understanding and political grasp, and will take these political learnings and understandings into and create a vast number of mass organizations and organizations in which the masses are present. So the reason you don't have mass consciousness of revolutionary politics or working class consciousness is because there is no vanguard. And the absence of a vanguard is the result of the ruling class destroying and preventing the development of vanguard leadership, which is a large part of what we're talking about in creating and building the revolutionary parties, including the party that I've co-founded.
I have a question, if I may. And this is kind of just for posterity, for anybody who's gonna, view this session. You use the word dialectical often. It shows up next to, in the dialectical process of development of revolutionary forces. And then, I think, according to the search function, it's used 10 times in here. It's in the Mass Line and Method of Leadership. Could you just give like a brief rundown of what you mean by dialectical, and maybe you could use the Mass Line as the object of analysis to describe it?
Okay, dialectics, the fundamentals of what I'm talking about is based in dialectics, which is the unity of opposites. Everything exists as a unity of opposites. Everything from light to dark, cold and heat, protons, electrons, life and death. Everything that exists has a dual nature. And there are, within every existing thing, one or the other force, or one or the other of the extremes of these contradictions is in a dominant position, the other is in a subordinate position. And when we talk about organizing the masses, there's a dialectic within that will determine the success or failure, the strength or weakness of our organizing. Our objective is to gain an advantage or to advance the revolutionary forces versus the forces of the enemy or the oppressor or the reactionary forces. There is a revolutionary line and there is a counter-revolutionary line or reactionary line, which is the line of the workers versus the line of the capitalist class. Our struggle in dialectics is to advance the politics, the consciousness, the awareness of the revolutionary line amongst the masses, and to weaken and ultimately destroy the work and the consciousness and the influence of the capitalist line or the reactionary line. And this is what we are talking about in developing the mass struggle and advancing the mass struggle from the undeveloped to the advanced, raising the masses of undeveloped versus the gross minority of the advanced into a minority of undeveloped and a majority of the advanced. We want to transform through a gradual developmental process the undeveloped into the developed. We want to create leaders of the everyday people. We want the masses to become leaders themselves. So through a process of education, organization, agitation, and struggle, we want to advance those who are now in the subordinate position, which is the revolutionary forces, into the advanced position, which would be to render the advanced or the revolutionaries the majority. So that would be the dialectical process of moving from one pole to the other, or making one pole that may be in a subordinate position, moving it to the position of being the advanced position. Does that help explain it?
Yeah, thank you. Did that spark anything for anybody? Does anyone have any additional questions based on that explanation?
I kind of have some concerns, but I don't really know how to address them. With like pyramid, so the model for using businesses as a metaphor would be the pyramid scheme. Like when I worked at Lowe's, they actually had an upside down triangle, and they tried to depict that as like where the CEO was at the bottom, and then everybody like the assistant managers were above him, and then all the way at the top were the workers at the widest pointer or something. It didn't really make sense. I mean, but it's not an actual pyramid scheme like you'd see from the Nexium organization or like some of these Ponzi schemes and all that. But it does seem that you're never going to have everybody rise to the surface and everybody completely advance to the level where everybody has the same amount of financial wealth and well-being. Maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, with the circle, and I'm not trying to like shoot down things. I'm trying to get at the roots of problems. Maybe I don't know, but the target circle like that Evie used earlier, that's a great model, and I think that still results in you're gonna have leaders at the center of that at some point, and so maybe it's more productive to say this is what we need to be aiming for. As an ideology or as just a practice or just that's the goal that we want everyone to be doing that. But again, that can be problematic because that's exactly what you do in capitalism and the bourgeois attempts at these mega corporations. Like they say, you'll all have an equal chance at making millions of dollars and being CEO, but obviously that cannot be. Like you can't have everyone be a leader. So I mean, it comes back to like education and making the classes conscious of the classes that they occupy. How can you like infiltrate upon the forces that prevent that from happening in our education system, and also just like having these major political shifts. I mean, this is certainly one way to do it, though, using the internet.
Yeah, that helps, but the internet is also like
Okay.
rife with misinfo, so it's like a double-edged sword.
I think that is getting better.
If I may, I'd like to add one thing.
Okay, let me go ahead.
With regard to you talking about like the corporate structure and how they try to make it seem like meritocracy is real. They always try to tell us like to climb the corporate ladder, but there's a quote that I heard in response to that, and I don't remember where it originated, but it was basically that there is no corporate ladder. It's just a bunch of people climbing on top of each other.
Hold on a moment, comrade. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was it.
Okay. All right. To respond to that, that would be actually one of the deformed responses that the bourgeoisie would give, or the ruling class would give, to make it seem that the answer is not an answer. You give the symbol of a pyramid. The pyramid being how the existing corporate or the existing capitalist structure is set up, where you have a tiny few at the top and the masses at the bottom. And they say, okay, well, to invert that, you would have a tiny few at the bottom and the masses at the top, which is absurd. An upside down pyramid couldn't exist. So to invert their structure would be to create a structure that looks ridiculously impractical. Because it is ridiculously impractical, you would not have a capitalist system if the capitalists were at the bottom and the masses were at the top. So obviously, what we're aiming for is a horizontal structure where the wealth and power is meted out on a horizontal basis, not an inverted basis where you still have a class of people who are hoarding wealth, but they're at the bottom, and the mass of people who do the productive labor but don't reap the benefits of the wealth that they produce at the top. That is a non-existent reversal of the situation. So what our aim is to eliminate the capitalist class, eliminate this apex or this structure where you have a tiny group at the top exploiting everybody else and the masses at the bottom doing the work from which the wealth is extracted to benefit those at the top. And I could give a more simple explanation or illustration of what we aim to accomplish. Take a slave plantation. Let's go back to chattel slavery. You've got an owner who exploits the labor of the slaves. The slaves are the majority on the plantation. You may have 100 people working on the plantation. The slave owner is one person, one man and his wife and his small family dominate the plantation. And through the structure of administrative ideas, laws, and rules, he has structured the plantation where he is the sole beneficiary of the wealth that's produced by those slaves. He only gives those slaves just enough in crumbs to keep them alive, to keep them healthy, to keep working, to producing the work, the labor on the plantation, to keep producing the crops or whatever it is that they generate that he hoards, he sells on the market, and he reaches surplus from to get rich and stay rich. The thing is, you want to destroy the administrator. You want to get rid of the slave owner. You don't want to invert the system where you still have a slave owner and somehow you come up with a fanciful idea that somehow you can reverse that. We still have a slave owner who's getting rich off everybody, but the slaves at the top and the owner at the bottom. No, what you want to do is you want to eliminate the slave owner altogether and give the ownership control of the plantation over to the slaves so that they reap the benefits, ownership and control of the wealth that they produce. They control political power on that swath of land, and they become the owners and the controllers of their own wealth and their own power. That would be the result of a revolutionary struggle to overthrow the capitalist system. Just to come up with a concept of reversing that system where you still have a slave owner at the bottom, but he's still reaping the benefits, and the slaves at the top is, an absurd reversal because it's not a reversal at all. So you would seek horizontally to seize power, to eliminate the slave owner and to eliminate the values and ideas that perpetuate the slave owner status, which is the idea that some one person has a right because of how he looks or because of his social status or what have you, to exploit everybody else, to own the plantation, to own the bodies of the slaves, to own what the slaves produce through their through their labor in wealth, and to claim his right to have that. You would have to destroy the whole concept of the slave system, the ideas, the values that undergird the slave system, and the relation of owner to slave you would have to destroy that. So gradually, you would have to educate the slaves on their status as slaves. You would have to educate them on their power to potentially unify, to take control of the system, and you have to educate them on their right to own and take control of that system versus the lie, exposing the lie that the slave owner has the right to own them, the wealth that they produce, or the production tools that they use to generate, the wealth that they produce. So does that give a better idea of what we're aiming to accomplish in the struggle against the capitalist system?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. And to add to that just a bit, when you say think laterally or think horizontally and not vertically, that reminds me of the 6 degrees of separation theory. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but this was Stanley Milgram popularized this. He didn't come up with the idea. I forget what it was, but basically you're connected to everyone in the world by 6 degrees of separation. Like somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows the president, or somebody that knows the warden of the prison system. And like if you can work laterally and think horizontally in that way, and just kind of like break past the ego barriers and all the natural psychological resistances to reaching out to people that you're not comfortable reaching out to, then you can really do a lot in making connection happen. Yeah.
Not that it detracts from your point at all, but the 6 degrees theory is actually a little bit outdated. They're saying it's down to 4 degrees of separation now.
Oh, really? Huh. Well, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
the internet
kind of.
has changed. Yeah, that's right. The internet's changed that.
I wanted to add a little bit. I got pulled up on the screen. It's chapter 2 of the Communist Manifesto. And in it, Marx and Engels say, we have seen above that the first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling class to win the battle of democracy. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degrees all capital from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state, i.e. of the proletariat organized as the ruling class, and to increase the total of productive forces as rapidly as possible. Of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of the despotic inroads on the rights of property and on the conditions of bourgeois production, by means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which, in the course of the movement, outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, and are unavoidable as a means of entirely revolutionizing the mode of production. So I just wanted to point here to, you can kind of see how they're thinking in terms of processes of development, right? They're not thinking about like an immediate reversal or an immediate flattening that just like happens once from a static thing. What it is you wresting by degrees all capital from the bourgeoisie, right? And so there's the second law of dialectics is the tendency of quantity to transform into quality and vice versa. And so when we say like a unity of opposites and using dialectics to study our conditions to make change happen in the ways that we want it to, right? That's one thing that Marx is famous for saying is that philosophers have hitherto only interpreted the world. The point, however, is to change it, right? So we say that Engels specifically said that dialectics is the science of change, interconnection, and development. And so so how we do that is small quantitative changes leading up to a huge qualitative rupture or a qualitative leap. You can think of maybe rupture kind of feels like it only has a downward velocity, like rupture inward, but you could rupture outward. I think in like if a seedling bursting forth from a seed pod, or like a baby chicken being hatched from an egg. It's an outward rupture. And it's an outward rupture that produces a new stage of development. And so what we're trying to do then is cause a rupture in the mode of production that generates a qualitatively a higher quality, newer quality mode of production that leaves behind the old way of things that no longer works. And so that's like everything is a process, right? We started the conversation at the process of developing individuals within a group setting, and now here we are talking about the whole world of the proletariat, you know, working to cause a revolutionary rupture in the capitalist order. And so just to point back to dialectics and to science and so on, and to sort of, you know, getting at the question of, you know, do we just replace the old powers with the new, or do we just invert the pyramid? And it's like, no, we have to like burst forth from the seed into a new thing.
Definitely. Yeah, the comrade is given the scientific breakdown of dialectics and the transformation from just giving the analogy that I gave from the owners having control of the productive forces, the political structure that enforces the productive relations and protects their power over society or over the plantation, in the analogy I gave, and how the process of transforming that from the owner controlling and exploiting the masses to the masses ultimately obtaining power through the exercise of political control, military control, etc., of the productive forces, and how that would have to be actually a graduated process. It would have to be, as he pointed out, constant quantitative change that ultimately leads to a qualitative change, and a gradual, it's a gradual protracted struggle. He kind of gave you the gradations of that process, the dialectical gradations, as opposed to me just simply saying that the model that the comrade gave of reversing or inverting a pyramid is simply impractical, and it doesn't change the contradictions in the society that bring about the power being transferred or power being obtained by the oppressed and the workers, and being able to exert and control society politically, economically, militarily, socially, etc. So yeah, comrade is exactly right in how the dialectical process would work in gradation and stages, which is a long process. But yeah, we would have to structure and struggle through a series of gradual changes to ultimately reach the goal of taking control of society and giving the masses of workers power. And that's kind of what has to be done in the dialectical process of moving from the undeveloped to the vanguard, of transforming the masses of people who are undeveloped now into ultimately becoming the ruling class, controlling the state, controlling the political structure or the party, and themselves becoming the rulers and owners of society. So, do comrades have any further questions or ideas or anything to add to what's been said or thoughts that have been shared?
I think I'm good on mine.
Yeah, I've learned a lot. Good.
I did want to, just real quick, if anybody would like me to send them a copy of this workplace spreadsheet for that you can adapt for tracking your organizational development, shoot me a private message in the Zoom chat. Not the number, but where it says Evie, just shoot me a message with your email or your phone number, and I will send you a link to this spreadsheet. And I also have here this a Google Doc. It's a list of text on dialectical materialism. It's not exhaustive, but there's a lot of good stuff in here to dive into. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys for joining us today. And Actually, I have one more like housekeeping note. Did a poor job again this week of getting announcement out in a timely manner, but we will be studying the Unity Struggle Unity transformation text that Rashid mentioned earlier. And I will have a social media post up about it by tonight, and it will have a link to that you can click to add it to your calendar and all of that jazz. And I'll try to put out more reminders throughout the week so that we get a little bit more attendance next time.
All right. All power to the people. It is important that we get our announcements for the study groups out widely as early as possible, so we bring in a good attendance. The more we have attend, the more reflections we can get, questions, ideas, thoughts, engagement, and the more accessible it will be to various different perspectives and ideas and people at different levels of development. So yeah, we want to emphasize during the study sessions, political education sessions, is most effective when we have, as many people as possible participate. So yeah, we want to emphasize getting this out as widely as possible, as early as possible. Yeah, appreciate everybody's involvement, everybody's participation. Would definitely like to, going forward, build some ongoing work with the comrades on the call. We can probably or maybe get together and more formalize some work and structure within the groups that we work within, or just in our individual endeavors. We can consolidate some of our work to develop some mass organizational work, intermediate organizational work, and ultimately advanced organizational work. So again, I appreciate everybody's involvement. In closing, do we have any other thoughts, criticisms, questions, ideas, suggestions?
All good here.
I do have one more tiny housekeeping thing. What I can do is make an email list of people who attend the political education sessions and want to stay in touch. And you can remove yourself from it whenever, but I just put my phone number in the chat. It's 804-221-5172. I'm gonna remove this part from the recording, I guess. But yeah, text me your email address if you'd like to be added to a list of like UPROAR political education attendees. And the way the listserv works is everybody can send an email to the list, and everybody else will get it, but it's like mediated through a proxy. So we can turn the settings so that your email address isn't exposed unless you want it to be. But that way we can kind of go back and forth through email, and we'll put out announcements through there as well as through our other channels.
All right, comrades. So that wraps everything up.
Yep. All power to the people.
All power to the
all
people.
All power to the people, comrades.
All power to
Y'all
the
have a great week.
So